Oh, good. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Basement and Remodeling Basics, and this is presented to you by Blue Sky Remodeling. This is a wonderful online education series where we give you everything you need to know about remodeling your basement or home, and you'll get to know everything from picking a contractor, cost, what to do, what not to do. We've got it all right here. I'm your host, Mia Voss, and before we get started, I want to remind you to go over to YouTube and subscribe to Blue Sky Remodeling, and you can watch all of these shows, including this one, anytime you like. And then also go over to blueskyremodelingdenver.com, and you can download their free basement cost estimator. So we're going to get started. Today, we have with us Adam Rossi and Courtney Maynard. Welcome. Great to see you again. You're both from Blue Sky Remodeling.
Hi, Mia.
Hi, Mia. Thanks for having us.
How are you doing today?
Good.
Good. All right, listen, today we are definitely going to get into everything about coming in on time and under budget. I feel like this is one of the most important things about remodeling. What do you think?
It's critical. Critical.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest first steps.
Do you feel like it's one of the things that people miss the most as well?
Well, they miss it, and they're also the least able to, I think, do the comparisons. They're not professional buyers of remodel projects, but screening and scrutinizing 3 or 4 different contractors is a very daunting task, even for us. So that's probably so critical to help them do that.
Excellent. And so what we're going to do for everyone today is we're going to break it up into 3 main sections. We're going to start with the selection process, and then we'll move on to pre-construction and then construction. So are you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
All right.
All right, great. So topic number 1, so you decide that you want to do a remodel for your home or your basement. Let's talk about that first meeting. Tell me who should be there and all the ins and outs we need to know.
Well, for the basement side of it, and both the remodel project part of it, that first meeting, at least one of the decision makers would need to be there, husband or wife or whatnot. And with that, what we do is we give a brief overview of what's going to be expected throughout the process. We'll take some measurements, find out what the homeowner's interests are, what their kind of wish list is for what they're wanting to get done with their home project.
Excellent. And then also, so is there a difference for that first meeting if you're doing a basement or like a major remodel or a pop top? Tell me some differences on that and how that works.
The major remodel, the pop top, even talking about scraping something and putting a new custom home in its place, really follows that same exact basic formula that the 2 decision makers, or at least the primary, needs to be there to explain what the goal of the project really is, how the contractor can best fill that gap of what the family needs, whether it's growing, expanding, moving, or they just need some new special space for the family to enjoy or recreate. So whether it's just a few thousand feet that they're remodeling in the house, a 1,000-foot basement, or building a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot custom home, we're basically helping fulfill or answer the question of how to get from point A to B. And that first meeting is really to address their questions, listen, first of all, to what they need, and then be able to come back to the office, meet with the internal design team or whoever might be internal to the company, and figure out how to propose best a solution to that problem initially in some basic terms.
So how long does that meeting usually take?
That first meeting will usually run anywhere from about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the specifics of what is going into the detail of the home. On the short side, an hour. The long side, we've seen some can take 2 hours, depending on if we're doing multiple areas of the home.
And here's a good question. About what type of thing that, let's say I'm setting up a meeting with you, what should I do to prepare before that meeting?
Well, really for that is whether one or both decision makers are going to be at the home. If only one is, to make sure that you have a list of questions of what it is that you want to know from us. We'll go through with you a step-by-step process. We look at the space. We take time to get to know you, kind of your feedback and what you're looking for, but to really have a list of questions for us that could help maybe answer or I guess just put at ease any differences that you might have from the get-go of what to expect, and really kind of help set that tone for the process of your project.
Definitely being prepared by everyone and having great conversation, really good in-depth conversations. And you're right, if you're not being, if the person that's the other decision maker isn't able to join you, you need to make sure everybody's on the same page, right?
Yeah, it's really hard. And then for that too, if one or the other is not going to be there, when you have those questions, we also recommend our homeowners to take notes while we're walking through and talking with them. Taking notes is huge because no one's going to be able to remember everything that you talk about in that hour. I know it's a brief hour that we're together for that first visit, but to go back and have to remember, okay, well, what did we talk about and what were some of those key points? It's very good to go into it prepared with questions, but also to take notes while we are meeting so that you can know that those questions or uneasy thoughts that you may have had about a home remodel project have been answered for you in that very first meeting.
I agree, and it's so exciting for people that they get overwhelmed. I'm sure they just, you start looking at everything and they get really excited. I would think even bringing some kind of, recorder, bring your phone, something where you can kind of play it back because you get very overwhelmed as a homeowner, especially at that first meeting.
Absolutely.
Right. And if I can just add one thing, Mia, too, on that first meeting, one of the first critical things that Courtney and I introduced to the client, other than answering questions and looking to what they want, the problem they're solving, is get into a little bit of the financial discussion, kind of scope out the project, about what they're looking at getting into. So if they can do some initial research, like using our online basement estimator, or even just talking to friends or family members that might have done a remodel project, that they're usually more expensive than people think going into it. And very initial in the process, we kind of coach with them a little bit on the expenses that they can expect to incur. From a very realistic basis, we'd rather scare away the homeowner from the beginning than try and win them and lure them in with a real low kind of a ballpark estimate. So that financial part of the discussion is, I think, really critical to that first hour or 2 hours meeting as well.
Definitely, and I think that I know you have mentioned this advice before, is having people go and speak to others, and you can always recommend them to former clients of yours or somebody who's going through a remodeling right now to have them do a little bit of prep work, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's key. I mean, just to know what you're expecting, we do ask that question, okay, what is your budget? And where are you at with it? What's the low? What's the high? And from that, we'll gather their wish list, basically, that we talk about at that first visit, and put together and try to stay within that budget for them, but let them know, okay, here's your wish list, but here's what your budget would get you.
Excellent. All right. Well, here's the next important topic. We're going to talk about the contractor selection process. This is almost like a good romance, right? You find that great mate, that great contractor that's going to help you put this project together. So let's jump into that. Let's start with, basically what kind of things are we looking for? And again, as I asked with the last one, is there any difference between choosing a contractor, obviously, for pop-top, basement, or just home remodeling?
I'll go into the part of just what to look for when you're choosing, and I feel that this goes very well with either a pop-top remodel or a basement, and really it's going to be chemistry. Yes, it is like a little romance. It's a miniature short-term marriage is the way we look at it, and we tell that to our homeowners. There has to be good chemistry there, and there has to be good camaraderie and communication back and forth, and both parties have to be comfortable working with one another, because you are asked to basically step out of your comfort zone as a homeowner for a little while and let complete strangers into your home.
That definitely, that's a great point as well, that you are bringing in people just not even into, it's not like a business thing, they're in your home, so you need to really choose wisely on that too. Give me some more information on that, on choosing it. What's the most important vendor in the process?
Well, I think, yeah, to kind of expand a little bit on that note is talking about the romances. You want to make sure that the contractor that you're going to bring into your house, that immediately you feel the professionalism and the company that really backs up that contractor. There are small contractors out there. There's medium size, 8, 10, 15 people. Then there's the really large ones. And then you even have like national franchises. So there's really 4 really main different types of contractors out there that probably all do really nice work. And it's really who you feel the most comfortable in utilizing. So I think in the selections, one of the main things you're looking for initially is just that chemistry, like Courtney had mentioned, that you feel comfortable with that person. And part of the burden on our side is to introduce the team that we have at Blue Sky. We're 8 people here. Each one has a very critical role in the operations of the company, very efficient, very systematic, and set up on processes. So we introduce how we will basically take them through the design build, which could be 2 or 3 weeks, and it might be 8 or 9 months, and then how we execute the construction project, introducing them to the team along the way.
Here's a good question. What do you think would be some of the top things that people should line up before they even start choosing a contractor? What are the top things they should be looking for? Let's say I just get right on the computer and I start doing a search for it. What things should people keep in mind?
I think the biggest thing that they need to understand too is that the dollar that they're going to spend on the project, no matter who they choose, it's probably going to be more than what they're ready to understand at first. So it's basically getting to grips that it's probably going to cost a little bit. It's like buying a car. You're going to go out and buy a blue car, and you need to be ready. That's probably going to be a little more expensive. You're going to spend a little more money maybe than you initially had thought. But listen to the contractor and get a feeling from that person that you're speaking with. If, one, they know their stuff, they need to be an expert in their area of pricing and estimation, because you need to understand, Courtney and I have about 180 or 190 companies at our disposal, our vendors, that we pull into the project, and we understand all of their pricing models, in fact help them set some of their pricing levels through service level agreements, and to trust that contractor that they're well skilled at doing that. Because then if you've got a contractor that has a lot of really good relationships with their subcontractors or their internal labor pool, that the project is actually going to go off just like we say it's going to. Did that answer the question?
Well, and I'll tell you, that's a good point that you're saying, is that your company and any good company will have a whole A-list of people that they love working with and that they can offer to their client and say, we work with this XYZ and they've been vetted out, and that's what your company does as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're very picky at who we let work with us. It's a privilege to work with us because we want to be able to take that professionalism and pass that on to the homeowner in the work that we put together and the craftsmanship that they're going to see in the end product.
I'd say that's a good sign for anyone choosing a company to work with, is that they have a whole list of their favorites, their A-list that they work with as well. So as promised, we said we'd get into some what not to do. So let's talk about what pitfalls that we should watch for when choosing a contractor.
Well, we'll go back and forth. I'm sure we both have a couple right at the top of our heads. The first one I think is the exact stated opposite for how I just said it, and that's just feeling comfortable with that initial low-ball budget. If everyone's coming in at X and somebody comes in 10,000 or 15 or 50,000 less than the other budgets, there's probably some clues in there that person is either not thinking it through, they're not detail-oriented enough. So I think the first thing that the clients want to be aware of is just being able to compare the bids that start coming in and being able to know how to scrutinize the different ones.
Yeah, I mean, just to play onto that, to shop for price alone when you are looking at spending the amount of money you're going to spend on a remodel for a home is kind of a big red flag, because you're setting yourself up for failure in the end, because you want to go for quality and communication and just a good, reliable service from start to finish, because everything in life is never going to come out exactly how we want it, including the price. And so I think if you are prepared to ask the right questions and not be afraid to truly compare apples to apples when you are looking at two bids, and we recommend to our homeowners to go out and get a second bid and to make sure that they are choosing the right one. We want them to feel comfortable when they are choosing us and know that, but really know the difference of the apples to apples comparison and not be afraid to ask those questions. Well, this is different than this, and what does that mean to me? Because when we do take contracts and bids and separate them out and really do a cost comparison for our homeowners, we're neck and neck with everyone else that's out there.
Yeah, the initial part of, the initial part of that design build is to help coach with them, as I used that word earlier, because we know the dollar follows value, right? So the bids that are coming in may be very dissimilar in look and appearance, and we have no problem helping them understand at least the different itemization that we put into our bids. There's a lot of transparency and explanation in our bids to help them uncover what might be missing from other bids that seem lower. And there's also sometimes you'll see bids that are much, much higher, in which case maybe that contractor did the exact opposite and either is too busy and just doesn't need the work and they're just throwing the fishing line out there, or maybe they've put a lot of things in there that necessarily aren't needed, or they're just extraneous or very high-end upgrades that the client may not necessarily have asked for in the beginning. So talking to the contractor, I think, is always the most key thing that they can do, and feel comfortable to talk to the contractors. We're not trying to take anybody's money for certain. There's a lot of times you have to break down that first door that I don't want to share my budget with you because you'll just take it. We probably are going to be higher priced than what that budget is in their mind anyways, and everybody will be. So it's just getting that comfort level.
And I'd say that being able to ask questions comfortably, so I would encourage everyone, definitely question it. And I know that can feel a little bit awkward, but if you're working with a good contractor, they're going to be okay with you asking questions, especially if they're transparent. Absolutely.
Angie, we had a person write in. They asked about Angie's List, Better Business Bureau, probably doing some of that initial due diligence research. Those are all great things. Look at your Secretary of State's website. Make sure the company's in good standing. Check the Better Business Bureau to make sure they're maintaining an A or an A+ rating. Check Angie's List or other contractor, places where they can reside. References and testimonials. We maintain a very big House profile. A lot of folks are onto House and Pinterest for their designs. In each of those areas, we can have testimonials, references, and then picture portfolios. So that was a great question by one of the viewers about how to do that research. And those are all great internet research resources that you can look at 11 o'clock at night once your day's done. You don't have to make any phone calls. You can just do it right on your computer at home.
Google is an excellent search engine. All you have to do is type in the name, start with that, type in the name of the person that you're considering, and then you can go from there and it'll populate it with it. So yes, great point on that. And listen, if you're just tuning in, you're watching the Blue Sky Remodeling Basement and Remodeling Show. This is an online education series. Please go over to YouTube and subscribe to Blue Sky Remodeling. You can watch these shows anytime you want. Tons of great information. And then, of course, go to blueskyremodelingdenver.com and you can download their free cost estimator. So, you ready for the next question? There we go. That's it. We're going to get into the pre-construction process. And again, we are going through selection process. We've covered we've covered selection, pre-construction, and we're gonna get to construction as well. So let's say we've selected our contractors. We've got 3 big things. We have paperwork, timing, and budget tips. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, it kind of comes down to that first couple meetings that we have, the very first meeting, and then a very short after that, maybe 1 to 2 weeks, a design and budget review meeting. This is where we can really first introduce the client to first contact of what does that baby look like, how expensive is, and we usually like to design and budget for just about everything they've asked for, even if we know it's going to be over budget, just to present all the details and facts. So that first bit of paperwork, that initial basic design, the floor plan layout, sketches, even discussing, depending if it's a large project or a basement, there's always a basic design in mind. So we try and accurately describe that. And then we also try and put an accurate budget to that so they can see things, not just framing lumber and drywall and roofing and windows, but all the way down to flooring materials, allowances for lighting and plumbing fixtures. So again, a very detailed cost estimate and a fairly good explanation of what the design is that would drive that cost, I think is one of the first important pieces of paper that we cover on the actual construction project itself.
And definitely that could get overwhelming at that stage, right? You're going through all the selections and the costs, so people need to pay attention and ask questions just like they did in the contractor process, correct?
Right.
Right. And, and with that process, that usually takes place in that second meeting that we have with the homeowner. And I know in an earlier topic we had talked about who should be at what step of the way. This particular point in process, that second interaction with the homeowner, is super important to have all parties at that visit that are going to be in charge of making that decision and really kind of understanding what's going on. This second meeting or appointment with a homeowner is really a working meeting. It's a back and forth, what do we like about the design? Based on what your wish list was, here's what we've come up with, here's your initial budget, and we'll show them everything to start with. And then that's where the homeowner can then say, that's really out of my budget. What can we or can't we do? What can we take away, or what do we need to add? Or what, I love it. We can find a way to make it work. And at that point, we then start to refine the design, which will then also refine the budget for them as well. We have a person online here who's wanting to know a question about contractors and do the changes for money do those inflect changing the estimate in the budget? Does that change the money and whatnot? Well, with the design, yes. As the design changes and molds to where it's at, the budget will mold and change to that as well, sometimes going up, sometimes going down. But for the most part, it will stay pretty fluctual with what we initially come up with because we ask all of those questions up front. We try to tell you just about everything that you're going to need to understand or have to wrap your head around from the get-go so that there are no surprises along the way.
Great point also about having everyone there during this really important process, because when you're choosing the finishes, going through the cost, everyone's affected by that that's going to be in the home. So it's really great to have everybody on the same page too with that portion of it. Let's talk about timing then. You get into pre-construction, you start talking about the timing and the schedule, correct?
Correct.
Right. So part of that second meeting then is to really try and impress and reinforce on what we had kind of told the customer on the first client meeting about the company and the basis and who they're selecting and how they're selecting their contractor. Because at this point, all the contractors are sort of all in that initial production and presentation phase. And this is where we'd really like to work with the customer to help them try and at least narrow it down to their top two at that point. We're not looking for business yet. We still understand that we still have to earn that. But it's nice to know that they don't have to do all these meetings times 4. Sometimes customers will even talk to 5 or more. I would advise probably more than 2 or 3, just because it's a big time commitment on their part. And if they're skilled at looking at the websites and really screening the companies they'd like to come to their house in the first place, one of the things we'd mentioned about Angie's List and Better Business Bureau is look at the website. You can usually get a lot of information on the company's strength and background just looking at the websites. If it's a real poorly done website versus one that's really kind of nice looking and introduces you to the team and introduces you to the costs, you can reduce the number of contractors you need to talk with. Once you've made that kind of commitment to 2 contractors, or maybe at that point you feel comfortable just going with a single contractor, obviously we love to have somebody feel so comfortable with us that even after a few hours of presentations and meeting with them that they've kind of given us a verbal commitment they'd like to move forward. We still have a lot of work to go. So your question was around timing. From that second meeting, which is the initial presentation around the base design, around the base budget, it could go from 2 to 3 weeks for probably the shortest that we've seen. Courtney and I can see small cycle times around a month. It may take 5 or 6 or 8 weeks to even design a basement. It could take 12 weeks. And it's around the timing around the customer too. They may want to push off a start until the summer or the fall or when the kids get in school or they're coming out of school. Or maybe they'd like to start before the family takes a big trip to Europe or maybe when they come back. So we really tailor the design build process to the company's timing. The client's timing. And just make our company's schedule sort of fit that. We're usually pretty flexible that we can start whenever they want. If it's a delay of more than maybe a couple months, we still may proceed with the design build, but we may put off some of the selections and the visits to the vendors and design centers, working with an interior designer, until a little closer to where they're ready to begin the project. But mostly the customers are ready to go and continue right along with the design build and then move right into the construction project. Large projects, design builds, pop-tops, custom homes, I typically see those can take between 4 and 6 months of design time, working with the architectural, structural engineers, the surveyors, and talking to all my vendor teams to where we get the permit into the building department. I think we talked about that in our first one, that once the plan set goes into the building department, each city also has their own timing. So they may review it right there over the counter with our project manager. They may take a login process of a couple weeks. And Denver goes as long as sometimes as 3 to 4 months for their plan reviews for the big projects. So we need to factor that in and discuss that early on in the design build process. So the expectation is realistic in the beginning of when the project might start.
Well, as they always say, timing is everything, and I know that's something that you help people with, and any good contractor will help you with, is coming up with the timing and backing into that and thinking about everything from schools and so forth. You know, kids being in schools, what's going to be a good time to for the home to be open if it's during the winter time, right?
Absolutely.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, and I just want to remind everyone they can go over to blueskydenver.com and you can subscribe and get all the great updates. You can also go over to YouTube, Blue Sky Denver, and you can Blue Sky Remodeling Denver, and you can get all of this information. You don't have to take it in all at once. We have, this is, I believe, our fourth show, and we're our third show, and we have a ton of great information for you. So make sure to subscribe, and then also circle and follow at Twitter, Facebook, etc. So let's see, real quick. Let's move on. Let's talk about, okay, so we're all done with all this great information, and we've got everything going. We're ready for construction. Let's jump into that. Let's talk about some of the milestones.
Sure. Some of the milestones, and actually we've had a viewer ask a question about being able to select their own finishes, such as carpet and the toilets and the countertops and whatnot. And that's a great question to ask to segue into milestones, because once you've picked that contractor and you're starting into the construction part of the process, picking your selections are part of that process, and that is a milestone in this step of the process. We will introduce that and kind of what to expect in our second meeting, and then subsequent conversations after that. And yes, with us, you get to choose what it is that you want to put in. We have taken the selection process and separated out from the construction part of the bid process so that you are able to choose A, B, or C faucet that you want to go into your home, or whatever carpet it is that you want to put in. And from that, we'll give you a kind of a good, better, best pricing for you that lets you know a range of where you can choose those selection from that will really help you stay on budget and be able to feel comfortable with the choices that you are making.
And we'd like to have an input in their decision making as well, to not necessarily mark it up. We don't mark up our finished materials. We actually provide access to our accounts for them to purchase directly through our vendor contacts that we've specifically screened over the years. Helps them save a ton of money. But at the same point, if they want to just go to Home Depot and buy something, no offense against Home Depot or the tile stores, but there's a lot of pitfalls too about purchasing on their own. And as long as we can just help them make those informed decisions, we feel better about it. Usually, they'll end up spending more money, and there'll be a greater headache and a lot longer timeline in purchasing from vendors that seem to be cheaper from the beginning. You see all those commercials on TV. They're never what they seem. And our vendors are very steady. They'll give you the first pricing right out of the gate that works, and we know the installers, and we're able to monitor and manage those installers so that the construction timeline isn't adversely affected by a really terrible purchase decision.
So what Adam and Courtney are saying are really great points to look for, and anyone that you're working with, that they're going to encourage you, that they'll have different sources that you can go to, and then educate you on that too, because what's on commercials isn't always what you're thinking it is. Definitely. Let's jump into, now that we brought up pitfalls, where do you think projects break down the most?
I think the biggest thing that breaks down in projects is communication. Just not letting the homeowner know the expectation, or setting that expectation from the get-go. Communication is one of the key points that we actually point out in our first and second visit with our homeowners, and something that we strive to go above and beyond to make sure that that homeowner is in contact with us every step of the way, whether it be through us on the sales side of it or through the project manager. We have an online calendar tool that we utilize, as well as being able to talk back and forth with via text, via phone call, email with our homeowners on a daily basis throughout their project.
That is such a great encouragement too, because I think on the projects that do break down are the ones where there's not communication between the customer and the contractor.
Yeah, even if we try and get that daily communication out, even though we have our online schedule system, even though we send a lot of text messages, emails, and we talk to them by phone, we have usually arranged site meetings that are set up through the project, there still seems to be things that can slip through the cracks. So developing that really good relationship all the way through the design and the sales process, it doesn't end there. That rapport with the client has got to continue on, and that's something we strive to always get better at. That's why we employ professional project managers, guys that really can get the job done, and they're not all bogged down by the white noise of trying to run the business as well. So having a dedicated professional project manager really enables that communication to be at least as efficient as it can be. We're always trying to get better. Six Sigma is our kind of touch point here. We're always trying to make sure that that client understands where we are in the process, what's coming up, especially with the decision-making processes. and communicate with them in a manner too that's friendly. It's on a regular basis, and it's not just informational, but it's actually, we understand they're going through a lot. They're spending a lot of money, and they're watching a house that looks messy in the first few weeks starting to come together. So follow that excitement, that emotional roller coaster with them.
Absolutely. I think, too, just knowing that, as we had talked about, the romance that you gain from this, and knowing that it is like a short-term marriage. So giving that expectation up front again, and letting the homeowner know, here is what to expect. Here are some of the pitfalls that might happen along the way. They usually happen with a lack of communication. We implore you to ask lots of questions. If you have a thought, don't wait until it festers inside your head to, send it at midnight and, oh my gosh, I should have asked that question when this was happening. We encourage our homeowners to ask whatever question it is that they have up front, because that keeps that line of communication open, and it lets them know that we're there to care for them regardless of what their thought process is through it, and it helps them understand the process and know we got your back 100% of the time all the way through the process.
So, and that's excellent advice as well. So just to give a few more examples, do you mind sharing a few stories of things perhaps that you've heard of projects that didn't work that maybe people have shared with you, some of the breakdowns and some of the things, maybe a couple tips for our viewers out there for preventing them during the construction process?
Sure. An example of something that can happen is ordering a cabinet, for example. We'll give a recommendation for cabinets and where to choose them, to ask for a lead time. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, especially with a basement. Putting cabinets in downstairs in a basement, it goes pretty quickly. A homeowner can walk into a showroom and find a cabinet that they absolutely love, and it's going to take 8 weeks for that cabinet to get in. The pitfall on that would be that we've set the expectation that we need that cabinet in about 2 weeks, and 8 weeks isn't going to cut it. So then they get frustrated that their project has been delayed, and they having to have that open conversation and letting the homeowner know, look, if you want to pick a cabinet that's going to take 8 weeks, set the precedence that this will delay the project, and there might not be someone working on your home during that time. But if that 8-week cabinet makes you happy, we want that to make you happy. And so setting that precedence that it's okay to choose that. We don't recommend it sometimes, but if you choose that, we will work with you to make sure that we can end on a happy note and kind of jump over that pitfall and get out of that little hump so that we can end up on top again.
Right, because then if you choose to get that cabinet and it's 8 weeks or 10 weeks out and it's coming from China, there's going to be a big hole in your basement where
Absolutely.
That cabinet is.
Absolutely. So does it happen? It does. And just finding a way to communicate that so that you can remind the homeowner, you chose the 8-week cabinet and we're okay with that, but knowing that it will delay the project so that that precedence has been set, and that then can help squash that pitfall so it's not an issue with communication through the process.
Absolutely. If you're just tuning in, we are finishing up with the basement and remodeling basics. This is presented by Blue Sky Remodeling. Today we talked about budget and timing and all the information you need to know, and we've been talking with Adam Rossi and Courtney Maynard. Do you have any last minute advice for us as we wrap this up?
Wow, that's so hard to wrap that up now. We covered
You like
so
that?
much today.
That was a lot.
I think it's just, gosh, do your diligence, do your research before the contractor comes out. Ask a ton of questions, take notes. Courtney and I provide a whole list of questions. We're even putting together a little idea kit that we can help send to them during this initial process to help them really understand, ask the right questions, be able to compare their contractors and understand value that we're bringing. And then do your due diligence during the shopping phases. Ask questions, communicate, and over-communicate. So I think it's all relative to just the homeowner taking a lot of responsibility to be very involved with the process because we need them to be, and we want to make sure at the end that they get that value out of the space that we're kind of committing to them.
And I think just communication. I can't drive home with that enough. If you ask the question and you keep that line of conversation open, you're going to feel confident regardless of the contractor that you choose to do your project because you have started that flow. And Blue Sky Remodeling is there for you, and we ask those questions and we implore you to keep that conversation going every step of the way.
Excellent overarching theme there is being able to ask questions and then feeling comfortable about it and having the conversation continue throughout the whole process.
Absolutely.
Great. So we covered the first meeting, we covered schedule, we covered the selection process, and pre-construction. Tons of great information today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Mia.
Thanks for everyone being on.
Absolutely. So we are finishing up with the Blue Sky Basement and Remodeling Basics. These are the people from BlueSkyRemodelingDenver.com. You can head over to their website at BlueSkyRemodelingDenver.com. They have an education tab. You can subscribe, and then, of course, head over to YouTube, and you can watch all the videos there. I'm Mia Voss, and we'll see you on the next show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mia.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.